The morning sun cast long shadows across the grounds of Kensington Palace as Prince William stepped out of his official car. His wife, Catherine, walked beside him, her hand resting gently on his arm. They had received an urgent call the night before about a situation that would test their resolve as members of the royal family. Neither of them knew that what they were about to witness would change their perspective forever. The couple had been asked to visit a children's hospital in London where a special event was taking place. What made this visit different was the nature of the children they would meet. These were not ordinary patients recovering from routine procedures. Instead, they were brave young souls fighting battles that no child should ever have to face. As they walked through the hospital corridors, William noticed how quiet Catherine had become. Her usual warm smile seemed forced, and her eyes held a distant look. She had always been passionate about children's welfare, but something about this particular visit felt heavier than usual. The palace staff had been unusually vague about the details, mentioning only that their presence would mean everything to the families involved. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the head of pediatric oncology, greeted them at the entrance to the special ward. Her eyes were kind but tired, carrying the weight of countless difficult conversations with families. She explained that the children they were about to meet had been working on a secret project for months. Despite their conditions, these young patients had poured their hearts into creating something extraordinary. The royal couple followed Dr. Mitchell down a hallway lined with colorful artwork created by the patients. William paused at one drawing of a castle with two figures standing at the gates. The signature at the bottom read, "Emma, age 7," in shaky handwriting. Catherine touched his shoulder gently, understanding the emotion that was beginning to build within him. They entered a large room where 15 children sat in a circle, some in wheelchairs, others connected to medical equipment. Their faces lit up with genuine joy when they saw William and Catherine enter. Despite their circumstances, their excitement was infectious. The youngest was barely 5 years old, while the oldest was 13. Each child wore a special T-shirt they had designed themselves. A brave little boy named Marcus, who had lost his hair to chemotherapy treatments, stood up with the help of his nurse. He had been chosen by his fellow patients to speak on behalf of the group. His voice was soft but determined as he began to explain their project. They had been working together to create something special, something that would help other children facing similar challenges. Catherine knelt down to Marcus's eye level, her professional composure beginning to crack as she listened to his words. The children had been writing letters, creating artwork, and even composing songs during their treatment sessions. But their project went far beyond simple creative expression. They had established their own support network within the hospital, helping newer patients adjust to their treatments and cope with their fears. William watched as an 8-year-old girl named Sophie wheeled herself forward in her wheelchair. She held a thick folder filled with papers and photographs. Sophie explained how the children had been documenting their journey, not focusing on their illnesses, but celebrating their small victories and the friendships they had formed. Each page told a story of courage, hope, and determination that would inspire anyone who read it. The room fell silent as Dr. Mitchell brought forward a large wrapped package. She explained that the children had been working on this surprise for weeks, knowing that William and Catherine would visit. The anticipation in the room was palpable as the royal couple carefully unwrapped the gift. Inside was a beautiful handmade book titled, "Our Royal Heart's Letters to Hope." As Catherine opened the book, she discovered that each child had written a personal letter, not asking for anything, but sharing their dreams and offering encouragement to other children who might be facing similar challenges. The letters were accompanied by drawings, poems, and photographs of their daily lives in the hospital. What struck both William and Catherine was how these children, despite their own struggles, were thinking of others. One letter from 10-year-old Jake particularly caught William's attention. Jake wrote about how he had learned to find joy in small moments like watching sunrise through his hospital window or hearing his favorite song on the radio. He encouraged other sick children to look for these moments of happiness, even during the darkest times. His wisdom seemed far beyond his years. Catherine turned to a page filled with drawings of the royal family. The children had imagined William, Catherine, and their children in various scenarios, always surrounded by symbols of love and protection. One drawing showed the entire royal family as superheroes, with capes made of rainbow colors. The innocence and creativity touched both royals deeply. As they continued through the book, William and Catherine began to understand the true scope of what these children had accomplished. They had not just created a book, they had built a legacy of hope. Each story, each drawing, each carefully written word represented a refusal to give up, a determination to find meaning and purpose even in the midst of suffering. The children watched eagerly as the royal couple absorbed their creation. Their faces showed no signs of self-pity or sadness. Instead, they radiated pride in their accomplishment and excitement about sharing their stories. It was clear that working on this project had given them a sense of purpose that transcended their medical conditions. Dr. Mitchell quietly explained that several of the children who had contributed to the book were no longer with them, but their families had given permission for their work to be included. This revelation hit both William and Catherine like a physical blow, though they maintained their composure for the sake of the children present. Marcus stepped forward again and asked if William and Catherine would help them share their book with other children around the world. He explained that they believed their stories could help other kids facing scary situations feel less alone. The simple request, delivered with such genuine hope and determination, would be the moment that stopped their hearts and changed everything they thought they knew about courage and resilience. William felt his throat tighten as he looked around the room at the expectant faces of the children. The weight of their request hung in the air between hope and responsibility. Catherine reached for his hand, and he could feel the slight tremor in her fingers that betrayed her own emotional struggle. Neither of them had expected to be so deeply moved by what they had witnessed. Dr. Mitchell led them to a quieter corner of the room, where they could speak more privately, while the children continued to share their stories with the nursing staff. She explained that the book project had been entirely the children's idea. They had approached her months ago, asking if they could do something to help other sick children feel less scared and alone. What started as a simple art therapy session had evolved into something much more profound. The doctor's voice dropped to a whisper as she shared more details about each child's situation. Marcus, the brave spokesperson, had been battling leukemia for 2 years. Sophie, the girl in the wheelchair, had been paralyzed in an accident but refused to let her condition define her spirit. Emma, who had drawn the castle picture, was waiting for her 3rd surgery in 6 months. Each story was a testament to human resilience that left William and Catherine speechless. Catherine asked to spend more time with the children individually. She sat beside Emma, who eagerly showed her more drawings hidden in a small backpack beside her hospital bed. Emma's artwork revealed a vivid imagination filled with princesses, dragons, and magical kingdoms, where everyone was healthy and happy. But what struck Catherine most was how Emma had drawn herself not as a victim, but as a hero in her own stories. Meanwhile, William found himself deep in conversation with Jake, the boy who had written about finding joy in small moments. Jake's maturity was startling as he explained how his illness had taught him to appreciate things he had previously taken for granted. He spoke about his family, his dreams of becoming a teacher, and his hope that other children could learn from his experiences. His wisdom and optimism were humbling. As the afternoon progressed, more children began sharing their personal stories. A 12-year-old named Lucy had written poems about her journey through treatment, focusing on the kindness of the medical staff and the strength she had discovered within herself. Her verses were simple but powerful, capturing emotions that many adults would struggle to express. The royal couple learned that the children had been meeting regularly in this room, which they had nicknamed the Hope Circle. They had created their own rituals and traditions, including a weekly sharing session where they talked about their fears, dreams, and small victories. What amazed William and Catherine was how these young patients had naturally become counselors and supporters for each other. Catherine discovered that the children had been corresponding with young patients in other hospitals around the world. They had somehow managed to connect with sick children in different countries, sharing their stories and offering encouragement across continents. Their network of hope had grown far beyond the walls of their own hospital, creating connections that none of the adults had anticipated. The nursing staff revealed that the children's positive attitude had begun to influence the entire pediatric ward. Other patients, initially reluctant to participate in activities, were drawn to the group's infectious optimism. Parents reported that their children showed improved spirits after spending time with the Hope Circle members. The ripple effect of their courage was transforming the hospital environment. William and Catherine were introduced to Sarah, a quiet 13-year-old who had been documenting the group's activities with a camera donated by a former patient's family. Her photographs captured candid moments of laughter, determination, and friendship that told a story more powerful than any words could convey. Sarah explained that she wanted to become a photojournalist to tell important stories that might otherwise go unnoticed. As the visit continued, the children began performing a song they had written together. Their voices, some weakened by treatment, others strong and clear, blended together in a melody about hope, friendship, and the power of believing in tomorrow. The lyrics spoke of storms that eventually pass and sunshine that always returns. Several nurses quietly joined in, having learned the song through countless rehearsals in the ward. Dr. Mitchell pulled William aside to share something that the children didn't know. The hospital had been struggling with funding for their pediatric psychology program. The administration was considering cuts that would eliminate several support services that had been crucial to these children's emotional well-being. The timing of the royal visit could potentially bring attention to these needs, but she didn't want to burden the children with such adult concerns. Catherine noticed that some of the children seemed tired, and she gently suggested they might need to rest. But Marcus immediately protested, explaining that they had one more surprise to share. The children had been working on individual thank you gifts for William and Catherine, small tokens of appreciation that represented their personalities and dreams. Emma presented Catherine with a hand-painted bookmark decorated with tiny flowers and the words, "Thank you for caring about us," written in careful cursive. Jake gave William a small wooden airplane he had carved during his long hours of treatment, explaining that it represented his dreams of traveling the world someday to meet other brave children. Each gift was simple, but deeply meaningful, created, with hands that sometimes shook from medication or pain, but always with hearts full of gratitude and love. The children had somehow managed to focus on giving rather than receiving, on expressing thanks rather than dwelling on their own needs. Their generosity in the midst of their own struggles was overwhelming. As the formal visit began to wind down, William and Catherine realized they couldn't simply walk away from what they had experienced. The children's request to help share their stories wasn't just a polite suggestion, it was a calling that demanded action. They began discussing with Dr. Mitchell how they could use their platform to amplify these young voices and support the vital work being done at the hospital. The following morning, William and Catherine sat in their private study at Kensington Palace, surrounded by the gifts and the precious book the children had given them. Neither had slept well, their minds replaying every moment of the previous day's encounter. The impact of meeting those remarkable young souls had left them fundamentally changed, and they knew they couldn't simply return to their regular royal duties as if nothing had happened. Catherine opened the book again, reading through the letters, with fresh eyes. Each word seemed to carry even more weight in the quiet of their home. She paused at a letter from a 9-year-old named Oliver, who had drawn pictures of his family around his hospital bed. His letter thanked his parents for never crying in front of him, even though he knew they were scared. His sensitivity and maturity were heartbreaking. William had been on the phone since early morning, speaking with palace staff, charity organizations, and media contacts about how they could honor the children's request to share their stories. But every conversation felt inadequate compared to the magnitude of what those young patients had accomplished. How could they possibly capture the essence of such courage and hope in a way that would truly make a difference? Their private secretary, James, arrived with a folder containing initial research about pediatric psychology programs and children's hospital funding across the United Kingdom. The numbers were sobering. Many hospitals were facing budget cuts that would directly impact services for young patients dealing with serious illnesses. The timing of their visit suddenly felt less like coincidence and more like destiny. Catherine suggested they return to the hospital that afternoon, not for an official visit, but simply to spend more time with the children. She felt they had only scratched the surface of understanding what these remarkable young people had to teach them. William agreed, recognizing that his wife's instincts about connecting with people were rarely wrong. When they arrived back at the hospital, they found the children engaged in their regular afternoon activity session. But something had changed since their visit the previous day. Word had somehow spread throughout the hospital about the royal couple's reaction to the Hope Circle, and more children had asked to join the group. The circle had expanded to include patients from different wards, creating an even more diverse community of young supporters. Marcus greeted them with his characteristic enthusiasm, but Catherine noticed he looked more tired than he had the day before. Dr. Mitchell quietly explained that Marcus had received some difficult news about his treatment plan that morning, but he had insisted on participating in the group session anyway. His determination to remain positive despite his own challenges was both inspiring and heartbreaking. Sophie had brought her laptop computer to show William and Catherine the website she had been designing with help from her older brother. She wanted to create an online platform where children in hospitals around the world could share their stories, connect with each other, and offer support across distances and language barriers. Her technical skills were impressive, but her vision for global connection was even more remarkable. The royal couple learned that several of the children had been following news stories about their work with various charities. Jake proudly showed them a scrapbook he had been keeping of newspaper clippings and online articles about William and Catherine's charitable activities. He had been studying their approach to helping others, hoping to learn how to make their own efforts more effective. Emma had prepared a special presentation for their return visit. She had created a series of drawings showing how she imagined their book could help other children. Her illustrations depicted sick children in different countries reading their stories and feeling less alone. Her artistic vision for the project's potential impact was both touching and ambitious. Dr. Mitchell introduced them to a new member of the Hope Circle, a 7-year-old boy named Thomas, who had arrived at the hospital just 2 days earlier. Thomas was frightened and withdrawn, struggling to adjust to his new environment and treatment schedule. But the other children had immediately taken him under their wing, sharing their coping strategies and offering comfort through their own experiences. William watched as Marcus sat beside Thomas, patiently explaining how the medical equipment worked and why the treatments, though sometimes uncomfortable, were helping him get stronger. The way Marcus transformed his own fear into strength for another child was a masterclass in leadership that few adults could match. His ability to find purpose in helping others during his own struggle was profoundly moving. Catherine spent time with Lucy, who had been writing new poems since their previous visit. Lucy's latest work focused on the concept of invisible strength, describing how people fighting illness often possess a courage that others can't see. Her words captured something essential about the human spirit that even experienced poets would envy. The afternoon session included a special activity where the children were creating care packages for newly admitted patients. They were filling small bags with comfort items, encouraging notes, and copies of their own artwork. Each package also included a simplified version of their book, condensed into a small booklet that could be easily read by scared, tired children. As William and Catherine helped assemble these care packages, they began to understand the true scope of what the children had created. This wasn't just a one-time project or a simple book. They had established a sustainable system of peer support that was already making a real difference in their hospital and had the potential to transform pediatric care in facilities around the world. Sarah, the young photographer, had been documenting their care package assembly process. She showed William and Catherine her latest photos, which captured the focused concentration on the children's faces as they carefully selected items for each package. Her artistic eye revealed the dignity and purpose in their work, creating images that told a story of hope and determination. The children began sharing feedback they had received from some of the new patients who had received their care packages. One 5-year-old girl had reportedly stopped crying after reading one of Emma's encouraging notes. A teenage boy facing surgery had asked specifically to meet Jake after reading his letter about finding courage in difficult moments. The immediate impact of their efforts was undeniable. Dr. Mitchell revealed that hospital administrators had been so impressed by the children's initiative that they were considering formalizing the peer support program. This would provide resources and structure to expand their efforts while maintaining the authentic, child-led approach that made it so effective. The possibility of their grassroots movement becoming an official program was exciting, but also daunting for the young organizers. As the afternoon progressed, William and Catherine realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. These children had not only found a way to cope with their own challenges, but had created a model for resilience that could benefit countless others. Their request for help sharing their stories wasn't just about spreading awareness. It was about scaling, a solution that could transform how society supports children facing serious health challenges. 2 weeks had passed since William and Catherine's life-changing encounters with the Hope Circle, and their commitment to the children had only grown stronger. They had cleared their schedules to return to the hospital multiple times, each visit revealing new layers of wisdom and courage from these remarkable young patients. What had started as a single royal engagement had evolved into something much more personal and transformative. Catherine had been working closely with Palace Communications, staff to develop a comprehensive strategy for sharing the children's stories. But every approach they discussed felt insufficient compared to the raw power of the children's own words and experiences. She found herself struggling to balance her desire to honor their request with the complex realities of media attention and public engagement. The situation became more urgent when Dr. Mitchell called with troubling news. The hospital's board of directors had scheduled a meeting to finalize budget cuts that would eliminate several programs crucial to the pediatric ward's success. The timing was critical, and the potential impact on the children's ongoing work could be devastating. The Hope Circle's peer support activities might be discontinued just as they were beginning to show remarkable results. William and Catherine arrived at the hospital to find the children in the middle of an important discussion. They had somehow learned about the potential budget cuts and were brainstorming ways to help save their programs. Their maturity in facing this adult problem was both impressive and heartbreaking. These young patients were now advocating not just for other sick children, but for the very services that had helped them cope with their own challenges. Marcus had prepared a presentation for the hospital board, complete with statistics about patient satisfaction and recovery rates since the Hope Circle had been established. His research was thorough and his arguments were compelling, demonstrating an understanding of healthcare administration that surpassed many adults. But his voice was weaker than before, and the strain of his latest treatment was becoming more visible. Sophie had been working overtime on her website project, knowing that it might provide a permanent platform for their peer support network even if the hospital programs were cut. She had reached out to technology companies and educational institutions, seeking support for her vision of connecting sick children worldwide. Her determination to create lasting change despite her own physical limitations was inspiring. Emma had created a series of new drawings specifically for the hospital board presentation. Her artwork depicted the before and after effects of the Hope Circle's work, showing frightened children gradually becoming confident advocates for others. Her visual storytelling was more powerful than any written report could convey, capturing emotional truths that statistics couldn't express. The royal couple learned that several of the children had been writing letters directly to hospital administrators, government officials, and healthcare organizations. These weren't simple requests for help, but sophisticated proposals for expanding peer support programs to other hospitals. Their policy recommendations showed a deep understanding of healthcare challenges and practical solutions. Jake had been corresponding with children's hospitals in other countries, gathering information about international best practices in pediatric emotional support. His research had uncovered successful programs in places like Australia, Canada, and Denmark that use similar peer-to-peer approaches. He was building a case for why their model could work globally, not just in their own facility. Dr. Mitchell introduced William and Catherine to some of the parents whose children had been helped by the Hope Circle. These families shared stories of transformation that went beyond medical recovery. Children who had been depressed and withdrawn were now engaged and optimistic. Parents who had felt helpless were finding ways to support their children's emotional healing through the peer support model. One mother, Mrs. Johnson, tearfully described how her 8-year-old daughter had been terrified of her treatments until She received one of the Hope Circle care packages. The encouraging note from Lucy and the small toy from Emma had made all the difference in helping her daughter find courage. Now her daughter was asking how she could help other scared children, demonstrating the ripple effect of the program. Catherine spent time with Thomas, the boy who had joined the Hope Circle just weeks earlier. His transformation was remarkable. The frightened, withdrawn child had become an active participant in the group's activities, eagerly helping to prepare care packages and sharing his own experiences with even newer patients. His growth illustrated the program's effectiveness in helping children process their fears and find strength. William discovered that the children had been tracking the outcomes of their peer support efforts with impressive attention to detail. They had created charts showing decreased anxiety levels among new patients, reduced behavioral problems during treatments, and increased participation in hospital activities. Their data collection methods were sophisticated, and their results were compelling. The hospital's child psychologist, Dr. Reynolds, had been documenting the Hope Circle's impact through formal research. Her preliminary findings showed significant improvements in patient mental health, family satisfaction, and even some physical recovery indicators. The children's intuitive approach to emotional support was proving to have measurable benefits that could justify program funding. As the day of the hospital board meeting approached, the children's anxiety was palpable despite their brave facades. They understood that adult decisions about money and resources could end their work, regardless of how much good they were doing. Their vulnerability in the face of institutional power was a stark reminder of how dependent they were on adult support and advocacy. Catherine made a decision that surprised even William. She requested permission to address the hospital board directly, not as a royal patron making a ceremonial appearance, but as an advocate who had witnessed firsthand the value of what these children had accomplished. Her willingness to take such a personal stand reflected how deeply the experience had affected her. The children were overwhelmed by Catherine's offer to speak on their behalf. Marcus, despite his weakening condition, insisted on accompanying her to the board meeting. He wanted to be there to answer questions and provide testimony about their work. His courage in facing adult authority figures while dealing with his own health challenges was extraordinary. Sophie worked frantically to complete a demonstration version of her website that could show the board the potential for expanding their program globally. She had been in touch with young patients in hospitals across 3 continents, all eager to participate in her peer support network. Her technological solution offered a way to sustain their work, even if local funding disappeared. Zadra. Night before the board meeting, William and Catherine visited the children one more time. The mood was somber but determined. These young patients had faced medical challenges with remarkable courage, and now they were preparing to advocate for their right to continue helping others. Their evolution from patients to advocates was a testament to the power of finding purpose in the midst of struggle. The hospital boardroom had never hosted such an unusual gathering. Around the polished conference table sat medical administrators, financial officers, and department heads. But the most compelling presence came from a small group of children in wheelchairs and hospital gowns. Marcus sat quietly beside Catherine, his small hands folded in his lap, while Sophie positioned her laptop to share her presentation. The weight of the moment was not lost on anyone present. Catherine had spent hours preparing her remarks, but as she looked at the children who had become so important to her, she realized that no formal speech could capture what she had witnessed. Instead, she began by simply telling the board about her first encounter with the Hope Circle, describing the moment when she realized these young patients had created something extraordinary from their own struggles. The hospital's chief executive officer, Dr. Harrison, listened intently as Catherine explained how the children's peer support program had evolved naturally from their shared experiences. She described the care packages, the international correspondence, and the measurable impact on patient outcomes. But what impressed the board most was her obvious personal investment in the children's work. Marcus was invited to speak next, and despite his physical frailty, his voice carried remarkable conviction. He explained to the board how the Hope Circle had given him purpose during his darkest moments, transforming his own fear and uncertainty into strength that he could share with others. His articulate description of their methodology and goals demonstrated a maturity that left several board members visibly moved. Sophie's technology presentation was the highlight of the meeting. She had created a fully functional website prototype that connected children in hospitals across multiple countries. Her demonstration showed real-time conversations between young patients in London, Toronto, and Sydney, all offering support and encouragement to each other. The global reach of her vision impressed even the most skeptical administrators. The hospital's financial officer raised concerns about the costs of maintaining and expanding such programs during a period of budget constraints. But Dr. Reynolds, the child psychologist, presented her research data, showing that the Hope Circle's activities had actually reduced costs by decreasing the need for individual therapy sessions and reducing the length of hospital stays for many patients. Emma had prepared a special presentation of her artwork that visually documented the program's impact. Her drawings showed the journey of children from fear and isolation to confidence and community involvement. The board members passed her artwork around the table, and several were seen wiping their eyes as they absorbed the emotional truth of her illustrations. One of the board members, Mrs. Fletcher, shared that her own grandchild had been a patient at the hospital the previous year. She had witnessed firsthand how the Hope Circle had helped her granddaughter cope with a frightening diagnosis. Her personal testimony added weight to the children's case and helped bridge the gap between administrative concerns and human impact. The hospital's public relations director pointed out that the media attention from William and Catherine's involvement had already brought significant positive coverage to the hospital. The royal couple's advocacy for the pediatric programs had resulted in several donation offers from private foundations and corporate sponsors. The financial picture was beginning to look more promising. Jake, speaking from his wheelchair, addressed the board's concerns about program sustainability. He had researched similar initiatives in other countries and found that peer support programs often became self-sustaining once established. His proposal included training protocols for new participants and evaluation methods to ensure continued effectiveness. His business-like approach impressed the administrators. Dr. Mitchell presented medical evidence showing improved patient outcomes since the Hope Circle's establishment. Recovery times had decreased, patient satisfaction scores had increased, and family stress levels had shown measurable improvement. The program was not just emotionally beneficial, it was medically advantageous and financially sound. Catherine made an unexpected announcement during the meeting. She revealed that she and William had been working with their charitable foundation to establish a fund specifically for pediatric peer support programs. Their organization was prepared to provide initial funding to expand the Hope Circle model to other hospitals, with the long-term goal of creating a national network of child-led support systems. The children had prepared for potential objections to their program, and they addressed each concern with remarkable sophistication. When asked about supervision and safety protocols, Sophie outlined the training they had developed for new participants. Marcus explained their referral system for children who needed professional counseling beyond peer support. Their comprehensive approach demonstrated serious commitment to responsible program management. Thomas, the newest member of the Hope Circle, spoke about his own transformation from a terrified patient to an active participant in helping others. His testimony was particularly powerful because the board could see the visible change in his demeanor and confidence. His journey from isolation to engagement illustrated the program's effectiveness in real time. The board was also impressed by the children's collaborative approach to problem solving. They had involved parents, medical staff, and hospital administrators in developing their protocols. Rather than working in isolation, they had created partnerships that enhanced both the effectiveness and the safety of their peer support activities. Lucy read one of her poems that captured the essence of what the Hope Circle meant to the children involved. Her verses spoke of finding light in darkness, strength in vulnerability, and hope in the most challenging circumstances. Her words provided an emotional anchor for all the practical discussions about funding and logistics. The hospital board requested a brief recess to discuss the presentations privately. As the administrators left the room, the children sat quietly, holding hands and supporting each other through the anxiety of waiting for a decision that would determine the future of their work. William and Catherine stayed with them, providing comfort and reassurance during the tense moments. When the board returned, Dr. Harrison's expression was unreadable. He thanked the children for their presentations and acknowledged the compelling evidence they had presented. The room fell silent as everyone waited for the decision that would either validate the children's efforts or force them to find new ways to continue their mission of helping other young patients. The moment stretched endlessly as Dr. Harrison looked around the table at his colleagues, then at the children who had poured their hearts into advocating for their program. The future of the Hope Circle hung in the balance, dependent on adult decisions about resources, priorities, and the value of peer support in pediatric healthcare. Dr. Harrison cleared his throat and looked directly at Marcus before addressing the room. His words came slowly and deliberately, carrying the weight of a decision that would affect not just the children present, but countless young patients in the future. The hospital board had been unanimous in their decision, he announced, to not only continue funding the Hope Circle program, but to expand it significantly with additional resources and support staff. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Marcus burst into tears of relief and joy, his small shoulders shaking as months of worry and uncertainty finally lifted. Sophie clapped her hands together, her laptop forgotten as she absorbed the magnitude of what they had accomplished. Emma hugged her art portfolio close to her chest, understanding that her drawings would now reach even more children who needed encouragement. Catherine felt her own composure cracking as she watched these brave children celebrate their victory. They had not only saved their program, but had convinced a room full of adults to invest in their vision of peer support and healing. Their success was a testament to the power of young voices when they speak with conviction and purpose. The board announced additional good news that surprised everyone in the room. 3 major charitable foundations had contacted the hospital following the media coverage of William and Catherine's involvement with the Hope Circle. These organizations were offering substantial grants specifically to support pediatric peer support programs, not just at this hospital, but at facilities across the country. Sophie's website project had attracted attention from a major technology company that wanted to provide free hosting and technical support for her global network of young patients. Her vision of connecting sick children worldwide was about to become reality with professional backing and resources she had never imagined possible. Jake learned that his research into international best practices had impressed healthcare administrators in several countries. He had been invited to participate in a virtual conference where he would share the Hope Circle's methods with pediatric specialists from around the world. His role had evolved from patient to consultant, advising adults on how to implement child-centered support systems. The hospital board revealed plans to create a formal training program based on the Hope Circle's methods. New patient volunteers would learn from the original members, ensuring that their approach and values would be preserved as the program expanded. Marcus would serve as the first official peer support coordinator, a position created specifically to honor his leadership and expertise. Emma's artwork would be professionally printed and distributed to children's hospitals internationally as part of a new resource package for young patients. Her illustrations would provide comfort and inspiration to scared children in dozens of countries, fulfilling her dream of helping others through her creativity. Dr. Mitchell announced that the hospital would be hosting the first annual conference on pediatric peer support, with the Hope Circle members serving as keynote speakers and workshop leaders. Healthcare professionals from multiple continents had already expressed interest in attending to learn from these remarkable young advocates. William and Catherine were invited to serve as official patrons of the expanded program, a role they accepted with deep gratitude and commitment. Their involvement had grown far beyond a single royal engagement to become a lasting partnership dedicated to supporting young patients and their families during the most challenging times of their lives. The success of the Hope Circle had created a ripple effect that extended beyond healthcare. Educational institutions were requesting visits from the children to speak about resilience, leadership, and finding purpose in adversity. Their story was inspiring adults and young people in various fields to reconsider how they approached challenges and supported each other. Thomas, who had been so frightened and withdrawn just weeks earlier, stood up to thank everyone who had supported the Hope Circle. His transformation from a scared patient to a confident advocate embodied everything the EO program represented. His words reminded everyone present that healing involved much more than medical treatment. Lucy announced that she would be publishing a book of poetry inspired by her experiences with the Hope Circle. Publishers had approached her after reading samples of her work, recognizing the unique perspective she could offer on finding hope in difficult circumstances. Her book would provide another way to share their message with young readers facing their own challenges. The children began making plans for how they would use their expanded platform to reach even more young patients around the world. Their excitement was infectious, but it was tempered by the wisdom they had gained through their own struggles. They understood that with greater visibility came greater responsibility to represent hope authentically and to never lose sight of their original mission. As the formal meeting concluded, the children gathered around William and Catherine for a final group hug that seemed to last forever. In that moment, the boundaries between royalty and patients, adults and children, helpers and those being helped, dissolved completely. They had become a family united by shared purpose and mutual respect. Marcus pulled William aside to share something privately. Despite his successful advocacy for the program, his own medical situation remained uncertain. His treatments were not progressing as hoped, and his doctors had been honest about the challenges ahead. But rather than being discouraged, he had found peace in knowing that the Hope Circle would continue without him if necessary. His legacy was secure in the hands of his fellow advocates. Catherine spent a few quiet moments with Sophie, who had been working tirelessly on her technology platform despite her own physical limitations. Sophie confided that there were days when the pain made it difficult to focus, but her determination to connect isolated children kept her motivated. Her website had already facilitated friendships between young patients on different continents, proving that geographic distance meant nothing when hearts were connected by shared experience. Emma presented William and Catherine with a final drawing she had created specifically for this moment. It depicted all of them standing together in front of a hospital that looked more like a castle, with children streaming out of the doors carrying flags of hope. At the bottom, she had written, "Thank you for believing in us and helping us believe in ourselves." The impact of the Hope Circle's success extended far beyond the hospital walls. News outlets around the world had picked up their story, inspiring similar initiatives in pediatric facilities across multiple countries. Children facing serious illnesses were forming their own support networks, using the Hope Circle's methods as a template for creating community and purpose in the midst of medical challenges. Dr. Mitchell revealed that several medical schools had requested to include the Hope Circle's story in their curriculum, teaching future doctors about the importance of addressing patients' emotional and social needs alongside their physical symptoms. The children's intuitive understanding of holistic healing was influencing medical education and practice. The hospital's other departments had begun implementing peer support models based on the Hope Circle's success. Adult patients with chronic conditions were forming similar networks, recognizing that the principles of mutual support and shared purpose applied regardless of age. The children's innovation was transforming the entire healthcare facility. 6 months later, William and Catherine returned to the hospital for the first graduation ceremony of the Hope Circle training program. 20 new young advocates had completed their preparation to become peer supporters, ready to carry forward the mission that Marcus, Sophie, Emma, Jake, Lucy, Thomas, and Sarah had started. The original members served as mentors and guides, their experience and wisdom invaluable to the next generation of helpers. The ceremony took place in the same room where William and Catherine had first encountered the Hope Circle, but the space had been transformed into a celebration of courage, resilience, and the power of young people to create positive change. Families, medical staff, hospital administrators, and representatives from partner organizations around the world joined together to honor these remarkable advocates. Marcus, though weakened by his ongoing treatments, insisted on speaking at the graduation. His message was simple but profound. Every person has the capacity to help others, and in doing so, they discover strength they never knew they possessed. His words carried extra weight because everyone present knew how much he had given of himself to make this moment possible. The Hope Circle's book, Our Royal Hearts, Letters to Hope, had been published internationally and was being used in hospitals, schools, and families worldwide. The children received letters daily from young readers who had been inspired by their stories, creating an ongoing dialogue about courage, hope, and the importance of supporting each other through difficult times.